Hello there, Happy New Year, and welcome to the first live stream of 2019. So today I'm going to be working through some coding for Create React Blog, which is my tool for creating blogs with React. So it's basically, it lets you create statically rendered blogs, just like Gatsby or like some other static rendering tools out there. And if you look at this and you think, oh, I might have seen this before, well, that's because the theme is based on Dan Abramoff's overreacted.io. So as you can see, it looks very similar. It's basically, the look is the same, but underneath the hood, everything is completely different. So Create React Blog uses Create React App under the hood, which means it doesn't require all of this configuration that a Gatsby app would often need. It just works out of the box. You type npx create react blog and you have a blog and you can start editing pages. It uses MDX, so I mean that's just configured out of the box. You probably want to use MDX for a Gatsby blog anyway, but you know it just works. And it also uses Navi, which is my router, and as I said, the overreacted.io theme by Dan Abramoff. So I'm just going to get started on this. Oops, sorry. I have a few things I want to work through today. So I want to update the code listing theme because at the moment it's a little, I think it could use some work. I'm probably just going to copy the one from overreacted.io. I want to use SCSS modules instead of standard CSS modules because I think it's just a lot cleaner if you're using CSS modules. And if you don't use any of the fancy features, then you know it's reasonably simple, I think. I want to just update the templates a bit. So at the moment there's no footer, whereas there is one on the overreacted.io blog that I'm copying. And there's a few other things, if I get to them. Add the ability to highlight lines of code. Add the reading time to the loader so that you can get an estimate of the reading time for each of the articles. Just, you know, a bit of refactoring and checking before I publicize this next week. So just if you'd like to look at the code on your own time, the code is available in the Navi repository under examples blog. And I think this is a little bit old, so what I'm going to do is the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to go into that blog directory, add everything I've already got as one big messy commit. I'm sorry, everyone. What am I going to call it? Big messy commit? Let's just be honest. There we go. So you can now actually access all of this on your own machine if you want to give it a try. Under frontarm/navi/examples/blog. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to dive in. And I'm going to start by doing some work on this theme. So I think the best way to start is just going to be to open up the source for overreacted.io and copy and paste because, you know, why not? I've already got attribution in the blog for overreacted.io, so I think attribution is important. And here we go. So all of these token dot classes are basically the colors for individual types of tokens. And that's all. I mean, the actual classes are added by a tool called Prism. So I can just copy and paste it in here and put it as global styles, and this should update. Yep, so the colors have updated, and we also want to update the background color. So I don't know what the background color actually is yet. Easiest way, I think, instead of going through the CSS file and trying to find out, I'm just gonna look in the inspector and do it that way. Here we go. that looks, that's selection. I think that's actually already from overreacted.io. So I think if I do this and have a look at the colors, and yeah, here we go. Gee, that looks somewhat wrong. So I think the other thing I need to do is set the actual default color as well, which is white, like actually white, which is really unusual. But that's okay. So let's apply this to these. There we go. Colors that match overreacted.io. I think that's okay for the moment. Now, I don't think we need to have these, because I'm pretty sure that Create React app already has auto prefixer enabled. I think they just ended up there because I copied and pasted some other code. Now, I also don't think we need to have pre-class language, because then you always have to specify a language for your code blocks in the markdown. And I don't like it when you forget to specify a language, or don't want to specify a language, and then suddenly there's no syntax highlighting. So, well, it's not that there's no syntax highlighting. I mean, everything is wrong because the styles all depend on this, not just the syntax highlighting. So I think I'm going to remove them. What I should probably do is add these to... What I should probably do is add all of these inside a class which is only applied to markdown documents, so that it's not applied to pre's that are used elsewhere. And that's a pain in the ass if you want to do it with normal CSS, but since I'm changing to CSS modules with SCSS or Sass, then that should be really easy to do. So let's do that. Let's start changing things to SCSS. So I think I am going to, well, one of the things I want to do is I want to create an article layout, but I'll do that later. First I'll just add these styles to the blog post layout, which is the layout which, it's the component which is wrapped around all of this. And as you can see, because this is like a standard CSS module and not a Sass module, you can't have nested selectors, and so you have to add local at the front of everything, which is just yuck. So let's get rid of all these locals. Just do a find and replace on that, and wrap it around it, because with Sass you can do this. It's much nicer, and it also means that I can do something like .blog post. Actually, no, I can copy all of these styles from earlier into blog post layout, and they're only going to apply to blog post layout, which is exactly what I want. But the other thing I can do is I can move all of these inside this as well. So I'm just going to do this one step at a time. First, rename it to Sass or SCSS. Change it here. And then let's refactor this as well. So let's do it this way. Then I can, just like I renamed local to nothing before, I can just rename blog post layout to nothing and then add it back in. There we go. And so now, oh dear. Now, yeah, I would have thought it should work, but there's no colors here anymore. So the HTML that's generated actually has the correct keywords and stuff, but these token classes are not being applied for whatever reason. And It's possible that they are being applied, they're just being overridden. But it doesn't look like that's what's happening. Let's take another look at this. So JSX dark. Have I added that dark, or is that, let me have a look. So in this create react blog template, all of the articles are within pages and all of the blog articles are within posts. So I can just go into here, take a look at document.mdx, and yeah, so I've added this dark around it for some reason. I think that comes from frontarm.com, where I'm able to switch between a dark and a light theme doing it that way, but that's not supported on this one. There's still no syntax highlighting. That's really weird that there was syntax highlighting when it was at a global level, but not at this level. So if I copy, I just want to see if this still works. I'm going to copy this into the global file. And it works, of course. I know what's wrong now. So one of the interesting things about, well, one of the things about CSS modules, I guess, is that CSS modules will always change the class. So if you have a .token.property class exported from a CSS module, then the actual exported module isn't going to be .token.property, say. It's going to be .token dash something 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 and property dash something. Like, it adds a hash to the end of the classes, but the classes that are added to this don't take that into account because they're produced by a different tool. So these actually have to be global classes. So I can do this. And by the way, if anyone, hi everyone who's watching, hello. So if you notice something that I'm doing wrong, please correct me. If you don't, that's okay. I mean, I didn't notice it, but you know, only a chance that you do, say hi and let me know what I'm doing wrong, because it's embarrassing. Anyway, so I think this should work now, I hope. Yay, there we go. Because this global keyword is basically just telling CSS modules not to append the hashes, and the local one is telling it to append the hashes. So nest them this way and it all works. Okay, so that's done. Now I'm going to switch the rest of these CSS modules to Sass. And this is a bit mechanical, so it's kind of boring, but I have to do it. One thing I need to work on more in the new year is I need to get better with editors and tools and things like that, because I often end up doing a lot of these things manually, and I'm sure there's a better way of doing it if I'm willing to put in the time to learn Emacs or Vim or something. Probably Vim. What did I do here? I have actually tried learning Vim before, but I have a really weird keyboard, which makes it hard because the keys, the movement keys, are in positions that assume you're using a QWERTY keyboard, and if you're not using a QWERTY keyboard as well, it's like you're just out of luck. You have to learn them in a different position, or everything is just hard. What have I done wrong here? Hi, Egoist. This is actually only my like third or fourth time doing a live coding video, so we're in good company. Yeah, that one works. Maybe I should rename them and get them working first, and then add the things, so it's like one thing that can go wrong at a time. That one seems to work. So I should mention, so why am I actually changing all of these to Sass instead of CSS? So I think that Sass is actually a very simple extension. I mean, it can be a very simple extension to CSS. Like, you can actually just use normal CSS in a Sass file and it'll work. So, and things like nested selectors, you have a look at them and you just understand how they work. Like, they're not really difficult. So basically, using Sass makes it possible to express the same things to the same people in a much more readable way, and with a much less repetition of logic. And given that Create React App supports it now, I kind of think, you know, it's definitely worth using. Oh, here's an interesting thing. So Sass sometimes has trouble with these @ blocks. I don't know what they're actually called, but I just leave them as globals because otherwise things don't end up working all that well often. So I'm just going to test that this one actually works by going into the layout and turning on the loading indicator, because I sometimes have problems with these because of those blocks that don't get put in the right place. So this one is in blog layout, which I probably should call app layout because it's basically the app layout. There we go. So let's just change this to true and check to see if the loading indicator works. Yep. Next one. Sorry about the boring first task. The next task should hopefully be a little bit more interesting, but it has to get done. Oh, this one didn't even have any styles. At least that makes it easy to do. I've just realized that I haven't actually been refactoring this. I've just been, I mean, enough. I can do this too. I'm gonna have to go through all of these and actually check to make sure that I've refactored them properly. Yeah, so the way I write my CSS files or my Sass files is I usually have one class at the top which is named directly after the component, and then inside that I just use whatever, because as long as it's scoped to the component, it doesn't really matter. I mean, I probably should, I mean, this is a page, so there's only going to be one h1. Like, you can kind of use your head for those kinds of things. It doesn't have to follow all these hard rules. At least for every component. I mean, sometimes the rules really help, but I mean, if it's just like a page in H1, then you don't really gain much from adding all of this extra logic. Okay, let's just go through these again. Actually, I'll do all of them first. So there's this one. Oh, this is weird. Why is it not scoped to anything? That was a mistake earlier on. So the about page still works. I could get much better at this. So this is XKCD blog about this kind of task, where it gives you a nice grid saying how long are you going to save by automating a task versus how much you're going to lose by not automating a task. And for this task, where I'm just renaming files and doing some really basic refactoring, I mean, it might take 30 minutes to do it manually, but it would take a lot longer than 30 minutes to do it not manually, like to actually automate it. So it's just, and I'm not going to have to do it over and over again. And I don't think anyone is going to use the tool if I actually make a tool to do it. So just do it the boring way. That's okay, because it means it takes less time in the long time. I mean, takes less time all up, which means I get to the interesting stuff faster. Okay, so article meter, that's this component here, and looks like that has worked properly. I can do this for article summary, which is, I believe, it's the article summary that appears in index pages like this one here. So this works. There's still no underline on the heading. The bio is this thing. I'm going to chuck this image tag inside here, because that's how I do it with Sass. Blog index page is the entire page you're looking at now, so this component applies to everything. And actually, let me go back here. So bio. I want to have this pattern where every single file has a single class that applies to the component exported by the file, like this. And sometimes I have more than one component in a file, and so I'll split them up, like one of these blocks for each component. But at the moment, I think all of these files only actually have one component, so that's why there's like 3 different blocks. It's just the pattern I use when there is more than one component. So I'd love to know, for anyone who's watching, I'd love to know what you're using for styles, because I have mostly stuck to CSS and less in Sass. I've tried a little bit of CSS and JS and like just raw styles, but I haven't been a huge fan. But I would really like to hear other perspectives from people who have tried it and liked it, because I might have just been using it wrong, or using it in a way that, or in a kind of a project which doesn't benefit from it much. Okay, so this looks like this is all refactored and done. So I am going to restart the dev server. And just because sometimes you'll find that restarting the dev server makes things break because of like cached files, but as long as that works, I'll push this change to GitHub and I'll move on to the next ticket. While that's building, Okay, here we go. So let's just go through and test each of the pages. So the about page, well, this hasn't got really much on it yet. These are two external links. Tags, that looks like it should. It's not very pretty, but you know it works. Oh, actually, I think, so this is going to be tag index page. There really shouldn't be any list styles there, I don't think. So let's get rid of these. This is an addition. This isn't refactoring, but it's a good addition to have. So tag index page, UL, because I probably only want the first direct descendants, because there could be anything in this description here. List style, none. I don't know if I need all of these, or this is just always how I've done it. I think it's padding 0 on the list items. And I want to make margin 0 because I have set the margin on this article summary component. Why is it not updating? Tag index page. So this is the tag index page. Definitely. Is the URL not a direct descendant? No, it is. Huh. Article summary UL. Okay, so this is interesting. So this is tag page. Ah, I see. I'm a noob. Okay, so this is the tag index page. I was doing this on the wrong page. So let's get rid of these change, because I do want to list on the tag index page. And I'll go to the tag page and see why this isn't working. Okay, so let's add those styles back here. Okay, that's nice. So React posts with the React tag are listed here. Oh, I found a bug. Article summary is making relative URLs where it should be making URLs relative to blog path names. So I'm going to import the join method from the path module, which is included in Node.js and is also available if you're building with Webpack or Create React App. That just lets you join paths. And I already have the blog path name, which is like the root path of the blog, passed in as a parameter here. So I just want to what I want to do is actually article meter. Oops. Article summary is this, and then this line here is article meter. So I'll command click to go into this file, and blog path name tags tag. Huh, it's already doing it that way. Is blog path name empty? Well, that's actually a possibility. Let's see where article meter is being used, how it's being used, sorry. Here I'm passing in blog path name, but this is being used in tag page. So I want to check blog path name and tag page. I bet it's empty. Let's check this here, because I've got less space to work with. Live coding. Tags. That's not correct, because blog path name should be the root path to the blog, but it's not that it's passing in an empty value, it's passing in a wrong value, so that's kind of weird. So tag page is, because this is a Navi app, tag page is part of the route basically, or it's specified in the content for the route. So I'll go through to pages, tags. I'll look where I'm returning tag page, which is here. Blog path name is join env.pathname ... That's wrong. So env.pathname in a Navi app points to the path of the page. So this is defining a route. So this is defining the content and title for the route at this URL. And then so this get content function returns the React content for this route. And what I've done wrong is blog path name, which should point to the root URL of the blog in case it's mounted at a subdirectory. It's just getting rid of the tag, but not the slash tags. So easy solution is this. There we go. So now I can switch. So both of my example posts actually have exactly the same tags. So that's not a post, but I could add tags to that anyway, but I won't. I'm gonna just try this. Congratulations on your new blog. That's not really a React thing. Maybe let's just call this example. Okay, so now we have Navi posts and we also have example posts. That makes sense. Cool. I think that all works. So what I was doing is I was going through these and I was just checking that they all work. As expected, this all looks good. Okay, I think I've checked actually all of the pages on this site. So let's chuck a couple of these over here. Code listing theme, it's done. I did that first. SCSS modules is done. Let's push that. Didn't I just add all this and like, oh wow, no, it's just that I've made a lot of changes. Deleted, modified, deleted, modified. Okay, so I'm gonna add this change where I've switched from CSS to SCSS for blog example. And if you've just tuned in, you can see the code that I'm working on at github.com/frontarm for frontend armory /navi. And then if you have a look in examples/blog, that's where I'm working on right now. So you can see here, switched from CSS to SCSS for blog examples. That's the commit I've just made. So all of this work is now available for you to check out. Okay, let's move on to the next ticket. So add bio and previous next links to the blog post layout. So if you have a look at overreacted.io, which I'm basing this on, then at the bottom there's a footer with the bio and links to the previous and next articles. So I want to add that to the blog layout for this as well, because at the moment the footer is just empty. So to do that, I have a blog post layout file /component, and at the moment it's got the header and then the content, but it hasn't got a footer. So let's just start by adding a footer and spell it right. It's always a good idea. Now in the footer, assuming that it works, we'll want the bio, which I can just import because it's already a component, because it's used on the index page as well. There we go. Probably want I need the title as well. So let's just see what Dan has done here. He's using a H3, which makes sense, I think. Well, it doesn't not make sense. Headings are like hard. It's like, I mean, this is different to that, but it's still a heading, and HTML is just not good enough to express it. So I think it makes sense. So let's just do that, which I think I have something similar here. So I'm just going to copy the markup from here. Actually, I'm going to close all of these open tabs as well. There we go. Blog post layout. Already got nav link imported. So it's just going to look like this. And I'm probably going to want to import the styles too. I could make a component for this and use it in both blog layout and blog post layout, but I won't, because I think it's I mean, this is just a template and someone might want to change this anyway, so Okay. So only for the h3 and the footer, I want to use this. And let's just do a bit of refactoring here, since I've only just switched to Sass, and some of this is still a little, could be improved, I think. So now if I have a look, hopefully that'll, nope. I need to import site metadata, because I have a file which, if you want to actually create a blog using this, then you can just go to source/site metadata and change the title and some of the information that appears in the RSS feed. So I want to import that and use that. So let's just do that. Okay, and I obviously want some margin as well, so I'm going to chuck that on the h3, because I don't think it belongs on a reusable component like bio. So margin bottom, let's just copy this out and see what happens. There we go. Now I think we actually also want some more of this. Actually, I want an edit on GitHub link as well, and discuss on Twitter sounds like a good link to have as well. So let's add both of these. I won't add like a newsletter subscription link though, because this looks like it is using ConvertKit, and you can do that yourself. Oh, I just saw Ashatron656 says Angular is the future. Hi, Ashatron. I actually used Angular JS back in the day, and I've taken a look at Angular, and it looks pretty cool as well. But I am focusing on React for the moment. So, okay, where was it? Let's add this margin at the top. Of the footer. And I think it would make sense to just try using the same margin that I've got at the bottom of the header. Maybe not. Let's try some more. Margin top 7 in that footer. Oops, that was the wrong one. On the footer. There we go. I think that looks reasonably nice. I think there could be a little bit more margin below this h3, so let's configure that to 2.4. Yeah, there we go. That looks nice. So I also want these links. So let's start with the previous and the next link, and then do the discuss on Twitter and add on GitHub links, which are also part of the footer. So this is, I'm going to have to change this later, but I'll do these first. So to start with, let's add a class to the bio. And I only use the uppercase when I'm actually doing a class for a component itself, not for an element. So let's do this. Footer, bio, margin bottom. I don't know, 7 rem sounds about right. And then I'm going to add some links. I'm just going to add test links for the moment, and then I'm going to figure out what the actual URL should be afterwards. So start with some test links. There you go. And I'll wrap this with like a class. C is next to V on my keyboard and everyone's keyboards. I've got a weird keyboard, so I don't always know if my typos make sense or not. Styles, previous. Now let's call it links. Let's call it a section because we can do that with HTML5. Just and let's add a class name to these links as well. Copy and paste. So I've got my links down the bottom there. Now I want to see if the margin here makes sense. I mean, that looks about right. Honestly, I don't think it needs to be perfect. And I want to float the next link, or one of the links to the right, or I could use Flexbox. I can never remember what this is, but I'm going to try this. Is it justify content? Hey, there we go. That was a fluke. Maybe 20% of the time I get that right. I usually just Google for it. Okay, so I need to actually make these work. Is the next order of business. So actually, before I do that, there's one thing I noticed I want to change, which is that these styles, the document styles, apply to everything, including the header and footer, whereas they really should just apply to the body. So I'm going to grab this. And one of the things about MDXProvider, so MDXProvider is a function which lets you configure how the different parts of the Markdown document are rendered. So this is saying that for links, I want them to be rendered with the navlink component, but you can also provide a wrapper component, which is really useful if you want to provide, say, a class name to wrap everything with without adding extra markup. So I'm going to make this a function component that just wraps everything, wraps the children, we have a div that adds a class name. And you'll see that if I save that it all still works, but then I can wrap the rest of these styles, which should only really apply to the content, and that way I can prevent those styles from also applying to the header and footer. There we go. Okay, so let's make these links work. So in order to make these links work, I'm going to need to know what the previous and next pages are. At the moment, I don't think I have that information available to blog post layout component or nav content, which is where the actual content comes from. What I probably want to do is add it to the meter property, because this is a property which you can use with Navi to just pass arbitrary information related to a URL through to the content which renders that URL's through to the component that renders that URL's content. So that's where I want to pass it through, and the value of meter is set in the pages directory, where all of the routes are defined. I think it's in pages/index.js is where the actual page objects which define that meter are defined. Maybe? No, actually they're defined in posts. Here we go. So each of the page objects, the Navi page objects, which contains the content for a post, is defined in this post/index.js file, where what it does is it uses Webpack to read in all of the post.js files, and then it gets an array of those posts and just creates page objects for each of those items in the arrays. So I think I have access to the previous and next one, or I can do that using some sort of mutation, so it shouldn't be that hard. Okay. The only problem is to get the title, I'll actually have to read in the entire page content for the previous and next page, because there's currently no way with Navi to sort of case just small parts of the content. But I think that's okay, because I mean, pre-caching the content for the previous and next pages kind of makes sense anyway. So let's just do that. Okay. So this is the meter, and I want to add previous and next. And I can get that by checking what index in the array we are at. So I only want to do that within getPage. I don't want to require anything outside of it. So okay, here we go. It's only going to be previous if we're not looking at the first post. Oh, here's a problem. We need to actually do the sorting before we do that. So that's alright, because I can do that here. Post path names. I can just let's make the slug first, maybe. Okay, I'm gonna shut up and think about this for a bit. So I want the path name and the next path name and the previous path name, and I want it to be sorted. And I want the slug, which can sometimes differ from the path name, because you can see here the path name has like hyphens between the date, but the slug actually has a slash. So I don't actually have to have it sorted yet, because I want to. I want it sorted, but I don't need to have the previous and the next just yet. Okay, I think I'm happy with this. So I've got sorted post details. That contains the slug, the path name, which I can use to require the file, and the date. And then when I iterate through them this time, I can then pick out the next and previous post. So I don't need the index in this one, because that's already important after I've sorted it. Don't know why I'm including the slug in the path name, but I'm sure it's important. So Where else am I including importing posts? Only in this file. So I don't need to export the path name anyway. All I need is that get page function and the slug. Okay, here we go. So there's only a previous if I is not equal to 0, so if we're not at the first page. I think we only really need the title. So instead of previous, oh no, I need the title and the slug. Title and slug. So I have the slug. And I have the path name. I did that wrong. And then I want the previous title, which I can get through here. Okay, so that should give me the previous stuff. And then I want the next stuff. I forgot to rename that. Okay, I don't know if this is gonna work, but let's give it a shot. With any luck, the previous details. Well, let's just see if it compiles first. That's a good start. Okay, that shouldn't have been a const. Require post previous path name post details. Path name is zone. This is really weird. So why am I not using post? What was I doing before with post? Date is coming there from there. Path name meter. I feel like, oh, how did this end up as post message? Well, first, let's just figure out what slug path name and data. I'll make sure they're coming out correct. That all looks fine. What happens if I get rid of these? Have I broken anything? Nope, I haven't broken anything that was working before, so that's a good sign. And this is only happening in /post.jsx, I imagine, because this is an async function and that's where the problem is occurring. So let's see what previous and next path names are. They're undefined. Ah, god damn it. Of course it wasn't gonna work. Oh, here we go. So this is working now. So I am gonna just clean this up a little bit. Then I'm going to see if we have that information we need for our previous and next links. So if we do, it should be in meter. So I can just plug in a little, just log meter and see what's in it. Previous details is undefined. Next details has the information we want. Yay. Okay, and let's just take, well, actually let's implement these, because what should happen is that I just realized something, an error, but I'll fix it later. What should happen is that once I've implemented it, then I can switch between them to see if they both work. So I just need to pass in the title and the URL, I think. So first what I should do is check to see if they exist. And the error that issue I just figured out is that the right one is going to not, I think, appear on the right at the moment if there is no left one. So I'm going to have to fix that. It's really a minor issue, but Okay, so I can fix that layout issue, I think, just by adding a text align right to the right one. Because that's not going to do anything unless there's only a right one anyway. What did I call the class? This is not taking up the full width. So it won't work. I think there's like an align self thing in Flexbox. I'm gonna have to look at the Flexbox documentation. Maybe. So I had justify content. Let's try flex and just see if it works. Nope. So there's this great cheat sheet for Flexbox on CSS tricks. It's not called a cheat sheet in the name, but I think it's basically the same kind of thing. So we have align self, and this is going to align it on the different axes. Justify content. I mean, if we had justify self, do we? Justify self Flexbox. Okay, MDN says it exists. Let's try it. It hasn't worked. Justify self flex end. So maybe I want end instead of flex end? That's not working either. Positional alignment. In Flexbox layouts, it is ignored. Oh, I thought this was part of Flexbox. Apparently it's not. Okay, well, there is a really easy fix, which I don't know if it's going to work if we have two, so I'm going to have to check this again. But and use flex grow of text align. This will grow this to the whole thing, and I'm just worried that it's not going to work so well if I've got a previous one as well, but I think it should be okay. Maybe I just add flex shrink one as well. I don't know if this is going to help, but it's not going to break it, so let's just add it. Okay, so we've got our next link, except it doesn't have a URL yet. So let's figure out the URL. Now, URL is under /posts. And it should be pretty easy to get the URL within the page. And since this is actually within the page, let's do that. Because get page, oh no, actually sorry, I'm wrong. What I can do is I can make meter a function. Make it get meter. And then I can actually, instead of just passing the slug, I can pass in the URL, and I'll use that join function I was talking about earlier on. So I can put join from path, which is available in Node or Webpack apps. That lets you just join two paths together and lets you use the dot path to navigate, to have relative paths. And then because I'm using getMeter, I have access to the current path name of the current page. And then I can just create a relative path, which, given that this is setting the slug, or the, no, oh no, that's not going to work, or is it? Posts. Okay, yeah, so I'm just using the post directly, the slug directly, so yeah, that's fine. So maybe what I'll do is I'll actually set these separately. Previous slug and previous post, and next slug and next post. So I won't actually set a object here. Where's title coming from? From post. Okay, yeah. So this require post because it requires, or it imports the post.js file. It's only importing meter information. It's not importing any content. So it's really okay to kind of import this wherever. You don't have to worry about importing every page's post file. You'd only have to worry if you're importing every page's content file. So it's really okay to just require the post here. Just wanted to double check that. So let's do it this way. It's a bit simpler. Got a typo there. And then I can create these on the fly. So I can pass through the title. and the, I'm going to say href. Path name. I'm going to say href. Then I can pass in the slug, because the slug, which is, so each of these posts has a slug, which you can see here, and that includes the date and the slug. So I just need to go down 2 levels for the relative URL. Okay, so if I haven't broken anything, then it should still work. I have broken something. Next post title, previous post title. So it is actually appearing there, it just the title object is not popping up like I want. So what is, oh, it's because I haven't done it's actually the default export of this, so I need to actually go into that there. Okay, so I got the title and I have a href, which I think should work. I want to make sure it's an absolute href and not a relative one, but I'll just do that by taking a look in here. Actually, no, I'm just going to add it and see if it works. So meter.previousdetails.href. Okay, so here's my first attempt at a hacky, oh, it's not that hacky, at a previous and next navigation. Next, it works. Yay, previous, it works. Okay, cool. I've got next and previous navigation working. So that's 3 of my items done for today. Next thing is to make code listing highlights. So if you have a look on overreacted.io at some of the code examples of code listings, you'll see that they have these highlights. And this isn't unique to this website. A lot of websites that do documentation and like coding blogs and that kind of thing, they have these highlights now, but that's the last feature really that's missing from Create React blogs. So let's try and add those. And to do that, I'm just going to open up the source for overreacted.io and take a look at this syntax which they're using in the markdown to what Dan is using in the markdown to do that. So his footer is only on the index page, so let's open that up and take a look. And then go into the source for overreacted.io and take a look at one of his posts. I think there'll be some code listings in this. Okay, so now I just want to take a look at the raw markdown. Here we go. So this is how highlights are being decided. So I think I can already do that and get the information within the function which renders code blocks. So let me try that. My headphones just ran out of batteries, so I can't hear any sounds anymore. That's okay. Okay, so right, so I'm going to try adding a page highlight, just like a code line highlight to one of the code, well, to the single code listing on the example post. So let's do that. So document.mdx, and let's highlight the fifth line, and let's just highlight the fifth line. Okay, so that still works, and because this is using MDX, it is actually, it's possible to change the component which renders these code listings, and you can actually see, I think, this 5 by taking a look at its props. Now I can't remember exactly how to do this, but I have another project which does the same thing, so I'm just going to open that up. This is the project which contains the components that render all of the posts on front-end Armory. So I have this document. If you can see all of the highlighting taking a long time, that's because my computer is struggling with the live streaming. It's an old computer, but I love it. Okay, so we've got this render pre, and I think that's being passed to an MDXProvider somewhere. So we've got components, yeah, we've got pre and code, and these are the two things which are used to render code blocks. So if I was to just copy and paste these, I don't need all of the complexity here because this is actually setting up live rendering, but it just gives me somewhere to start from. So let's get rid of that. I don't need that anymore. But I do want, this is a function, so it's not a class component, so let's just change the syntax here. For the moment I can just render really basic components, but actually I wonder, do I have something else that's doing this further up? Or is this the only MDXProvider? Take a look at app.js. Nope. And blog layout.js. Nope. No MDXProvider, so this must be the only MDXProvider. So yeah, I'm just gonna supply a code and a pre-component, custom code and pre-component, and then check what the props are, and just render a plain old code component, I think. I don't need to do any of this. Actually, maybe I want this. I got fence string highlighted source language. Okay, let's just leave that there and then return code. And let's do the same thing with pre. Let's just return. Let's just return pre. And see what MDX is providing. And then figure out how we're going to implement those highlighted lines. Okay, so it's still working, and if I log the props, which I actually probably want to do on pre, because otherwise I'm going to get a lot of different console statements, because each of these is a code, whereas the blocks are the only ones for pre's. So I've got class name language JSX, children. Oh, this is interesting. I don't have. I have the class name here. Oh, I see. Okay, so I'm rendering a code. Huh. But I'm only logging the. Class name JSX. Ah, I get it. Okay, so what's happening here is that the code, these blocks are composed of a pre wrapped around a code, and the 5 is only being passed through to the class name on the code inside. And I don't know why that is. It could be something to do with MDX loader. It might be one of the defaults, or but I'm not going to worry about too much about why that is, and I'm just gonna extract this and deal with it. So I can get the how am I going to do this? I can get the language, and I can get the highlighted lines by looking at the props. Obviously, they need to apply styles to those lines. A good first step is probably just to get those lines. And the other problem, of course, is that all of this here is it's just a block of HTML as a string. It's not actually a React element. So splitting that up and applying the correct styles to the right lines might be a little bit tricky. In fact, that might be really tricky. So this is where I stop what I'm doing and have a look at how Gatsby does it. So I know what the syntax for using, I know what the syntax to use when you're writing this is, but I don't know how to actually implement it yet. Okay. So Dan has used a plugin, a Gatsby plugin to set up the line highlights, I think. Where did I see that? I saw it in the style sheet. I don't even remember where I saw the style sheet though. It's not here. It's not here. Could be an asset? No. So it's probably in component. Nope. Where did I get that style sheet that I was looking at earlier? Have I got it open in one of my editors? I do. Gatsby highlight. Gatsby highlight code line. Let's just Google for this. Gatsby remark prism.js. Gatsby remark highlights. It could be one of these two. Add syntax highlighting to code blocks in Markdown forms using prism.js. High show line numbers, no inline highlight. Narrow windows suck. Nope. Class prefix. I don't think it's that. So is there like two different line highlight bug? I think I'm going to have a look at the source of both of these to figure out what's happening. It could be that I should modify MDX loader and add this as a feature directly to that, and I'm going to have to modify MDX loader anyway because I want to do that to get the reading time estimate that they have right here. Okay, let's just take a look at the source of this though. So I'm using Prism. So if I can do it using Prism, then I want to do it using Prism. So let's start by looking at the source for this. Gatsby remark Prism.js. This looks promising. Line numbers, I think, would be line numbers on the actual lines. Yeah. Does he have line numbers? Because I might want to add them too. No line numbers. I kind of like the idea of adding line numbers, but I'm not going to, because unless the HTML doesn't, he's just hiding them. Because this is something that's better to add, I think, in the loader. But then it also makes copying and pasting harder if it's not done right. I don't think I have time for that today, so maybe in the future I'll add line numbers. But let's just keep looking and see if they do this hidden highlight code. I think this is what I want. Prism.highlight. Nope, this isn't what I want. This is the thing that actually adds all of those token spans. Oh, here we go. Oh, this looks promising. This is exactly what I want. If a highlight range is passed with the language decoration, we use only that and do not try to pass highlight directives. Actions. So where is all the sources? Pass numeric range. Oh, this is beautiful. This is what we want. Gatsby highlight code line. So I kind of think that what I want to do is actually add this feature to MDX Loader. Because this really should happen in the build system, not at runtime. And Create React App makes it really hard to configure the build system. But I mean, it's possible to add it at runtime, but yeah, let's add it to the loader. And because the version of Create React App that I'm using, it's actually a fork which uses MDX Loader for MDX support, and that means that if I add this to MDX Loader, then this is just all going to work without having to add any more code in here, other than adding some styles. The only thing is, I probably want to be able to configure the class, because if you can see here, it's this Gatsby highlight code line which is being added, and this works for Gatsby because it's a plugin and they can kind of have this global thing, but it's not great if a loader like MDX Loader. So instead, I'm probably going to want to be able to pass a prop into the component, which allows you to set the class name, maybe. I don't know how to do this, Anyway, let's open up MDXloader's source as a first step, because I've decided that I'm going to add it to MDXloader. So if you want to follow along with this one, then the MDXloader source is also public. It's part of MDXutil, and the package is MDXloader on GitHub/frontarm. So I think it should be in my recent. There we go. Now I don't have proper tests for MDXutil because I've just been using it within. I've been testing it within frontarm or front-end armory itself. So I'm gonna have to figure out a way to test this new feature as well, and the reading time feature. So I'm using Prism at the moment to highlight with MDXloader, so it's just going to be a matter of updating this. Now Prism already adds a global, it adds this class name prop, and that's how I've been finding the class name, is by taking a look at the class. That's how I've been finding the language, is by taking a look at the class name that's being passed in. So if you take a look at the inspector again, like if we have a look at the source for this, you'll see that there is, actually let me open up the React DevTools, because that makes more sense. So we see that there's this gotta open it up. Huh. Unknown. I wonder where that's coming from. I don't know. Anyway, so here we go. So pre has language JSX, and so if you take a look at the class name prop, then you can figure out what the language is. And so I could do it dynamically. I could do this highlighting dynamically by passing the line range, the highlighted line number ranges out of this class name, but that is kind of messy. So how am I gonna name the class, the highlighted class? Gatsby highlight code line. The problem, of course, is that so the other thing is, like, all of these classes that are produced by Prism are globals, and I ran into that problem earlier on, like right at the start of this stream, when I was converting things to SCSS, because you still need to use global classes, global CSS classes, to reference these token classes and the classes used for highlighting by Prism. So you can see that if I open up blog post layout.module.css, we have token. Oh, what did I do there? Token string, token punctuation. Is there like a Prism plugin that does this? Because there's a Gatsby plugin, but it feels like Prism itself could do this. Examples, yeah, like this kind of thing here, right? Through the data line attribute. Temporary line highlight. You know, I think I can just call it line highlight, call it class. really. Because there's no way to configure these classes, the token classes, and they're basically the same thing. They're just global classes which are applied to like a string of HTML. So no need to fuss about this. Just get rid of Gatsby and call it highlighted code line or line highlight, or I think line highlight is best. Yeah, okay, let's go with that. Okay, so Gatsby remark prism.js. Who made this? Got to give attribution. Package.json. Oh, Kyle Matthews. So the creator of Gatsby made this. Just gotta make sure the license lets me use it. MIT. Awesome. Okay. Thanks, Kyle. I'm gonna add line highlighting support and reading time support to MDX Loader. So how are we gonna do this? Gatsby remark prism.js. Oops. So first thing I need to do is load up MDX util as it stands at the moment. Let's try and link it into the project I'm working on at the moment. That's the best way to do this. What kind of node modules do we have? What kind of dependencies do we have? Because linking things can make things really messy when the dependencies are kind of funny. But you know what? Is since we're already using MDX Loader, I can probably just remove all of the I don't know if this is going to work, but I might be able to just remove all of the dependencies so I don't get any weird behavior from like doubled up dependencies, and then just link it in as it is. Let's try this. npm link. Oh, then it's going to install it. Okay. Well, while it's installing, let's take a look at the list of things to do. Code listing, line highlights, add reading time to MDX Loader. That's basically all we've got left, and then this blog template is pretty much ready to go. Okay, I'm going to remove these node modules again and hope that I can link this in. I really should write tests, I just don't have time to do that tonight. So for anyone who's watching, if you'd like to make tests for if you'd like to contribute to MDX Loader, I'd love some tests that just make sure the thing works after a change. Don't need this because I'm using yarn. Okay. Then I'm going to link in MDX Loader. I should have just used yarn, right? Why did I use npm link when I could have used yarn link? Anyway, okay, let's try this. Does this work? Let's see. Nope, it doesn't work. Oh well, it was a nice thought, I guess. You never know if it's gonna work. But loader utils is not being included. Why is loader utils is not able to be found? Why is that? Well, I guess there's no loader utils here. There is, so it's because of the link. Okay, I'm gonna have to try this something else. Let's try doing yarn install and doing. Okay, let's rm MDX Loader. I did npm link. I'm not sure why. I always use yarn, so I'm gonna try this again with yarn and with node modules and just see if it works. takes a while though. And while I'm waiting, I'm going to send a tweet saying that I am adding features to MDXloader. Sorry, every time I like change out of this window, my console disappears. I've got to fix that. I think this year has got to be the year that I figure out how to use my tools better, like figure out better ways to use editors and consoles and all that. But yep, for the moment, just click out of the window and it will disappear. That's okay. Here we go. So that has worked, and then I'm gonna yarn link, and I think it's already linked in. So I'm just gonna try this to make sure it's the right one. Yeah, so now I can yarn link MDXloader here, and let's try starting this again and see if this works now. Hopefully. Otherwise I'm gonna be stuck. Oh, it worked. Sick. Awesome. Happy about that. Okay, let's try adding these features. Oh, by the way, my YouTube is telling me that my machine is kind of struggling to keep up with the live streaming, so if it gets really bad, send me a comment in the box and I'll turn it off and start it up again. I think I do need a new machine. But I'll just keep going for the moment and just let me know if you'd like me to turn it off and start it up again. Okay, so this is working. Let's try making a change and seeing if that comes through properly. So get language. Where's get language being used? Lang, which is then. So I'm adding that to the class name. So I could probably class name property. So I could probably add another property. I could do something silly like, here we go, node.properties dot using a linked version equals true. I don't think that's gonna. So one problem here is I'm gonna have to restart the dev server every time I make a change. So I'm not gonna test every change because restarting the dev server takes a little bit, especially on my 5-year-old machine while I'm doing live streaming. But let's just make sure this is working so I can test changes when I need to. There we go. So, well, that's worked because React is complaining that use linked version is not a proper prop. So, I can make some changes to MDXloader and then basically just test them by running my dev server. Okay, so what changes do we want to make? Well, I've got two changes. One is to add the line highlighting, and the other one is to add the reading time. Now, the reading time is using something from Gatsby as well, I think, but I'm just going to have a look in the source for Dan's blog and see if it appears. Format reading time appears. But that's only formatting it, it's not actually computing it. So let's actually, yeah, I'm gonna turn this off for like 5 minutes to let my computer cool down, and I'll be back in 5 minutes. So thanks for watching.